Quick side note before we begin. This was initially supposed to be being Garden Rush Fanny power-ups. However, after day 7, I said, hell no, that's not possible without Needle Burst. And then I tried beating the game without Endurian Drop. And even on Expert, it was basically a casual playthrough. So I decided to just make a video where I talk about Garden Rush. I was gonna do this partially throughout the videos, not like I was not gonna talk about this pretty damn good mod that was inspired by Kingdom Rush of all things. Okay. All the footage in this video is from my challenge run that I did, so there's that. Anyways, without further ado, let's begin with what makes Garden Rush as special as it is. Okay, let's start with one of the big ones. Sunflowers are completely optional, and you won't be getting any of them down, more importantly. So that means most of your sun will come from the sky. I am not saying sun producers aren't helpful. Hell no! Sunny Twins in particular is quite good, and sunflowers aren't too shabby. Okay, a little bit of side tangent. I'm not sure if Sunny Twins or sunflowers are better. Sunny Twins is a bit more convenient, as for most levels you won't need more than like 4 sunflowers. And while 4 sunflowers are mathematically better, they're a bit more of a hassle to put down, as they kind of interfere with your early game a bit. Long story short, you won't see the traditional 2+ columns of sunflowers that you see in most PvZ gameplay, I guess. You'll see usually 4 rows of sunflowers, or 1 Sunny Twin, and a hero in the middle. Speaking of which, that's a nice segue into my next part, the heroes. Sir Cabbage III and the Sunny Twins are absolutely great. A condension of your usual sun production, and the hero that is basically locked to your seed slots, figuratively. Like, if you don't have Sir Cabbage III, you're gonna make your life a bit harder. He has the splash, he has the damage, he has it all. He's a bit unreliable from what I've seen in this challenge run. However, he fulfills way too important roles to just kick him off. That would have been good segue number 2 to talk about the seed slot situation. However, there's another hero, Witch Hazel. I know her name in Garden Rush. She kinda sucks. She deals a lot of damage without Cabbage Pulse Splash, and she makes a wall. That's kinda sucks. The wall isn't that good, and Endurance damage sucks. And the splash is kind of a big selling point for Sir Cabbage III. So she kinda falls to the background in comparison to the Cabbage. Also, she has anti-synergy with Bramblebush, a very, very potent plant. Because Witch Hazel ruined my good segue, now I have to put in a mediocre segue. From talking about the Endurian spawner to Endurian drop, the power-up, and also power-ups in general. Endurian drop is mostly an early game tool, but it's also relevant a bit into the late game for certain zombies, especially the heaviest threat in the Garden Rush. P's kind of consistent counter. He's basically always gonna be in your deck, so even if you pick only long recharge plants, you'll still have a counter to him. Okay, now for the plants that prevented me from beating this game without power-ups, Needle Burst. Needle Burst is basically the big insta, though it's kind of a Doom Shroom that clears out multiple waves. However, it also sends quite a lot at you at once, so you really gotta use it in the right moment. Spoiler alert, it's when huge waves come, because that's when the most zombies are on your lawn. There's also a third power-up, Squash. However, he's only normal mode, and he's kinda there as a safety net. If there's a huge clump of zombies, boom, squash them. Also has a long recharge because of that. Anyways, on to the next aspect that I've kinda already alluded to. You only have 4 seed slots in Garden Rush, meaning that duplicate roles are absolutely going to be a detriment. This is why you don't pick Sir Cabbage III and Spikeweed. Splash and Splash doesn't work. And also that's why you don't pick Sunflower and Sunny Twins. You're wasting so many seed slots. For the final mechanical change, plants have a lot of HP. For instance, P-Shooter and most base plants have 1000 HP. One zombie can nibble at them for 10 seconds before the plant dies. 3.3 times as much as base game. All this balance stuff kinda makes the game feel a bit more laid back. Not slow or easy, relaxed. As in, there's not as much to manage early game, for instance. You can comfortably watch a zombie eat a pea shooter. You don't have to spam your sunflowers and potato mines early game. Walls last longer. You don't have to spend as much time picking seed slots and micro stuff, etc, etc. Well, power-ups are some micro, but they have 20 seconds recharge. The minimum. So, as if they're any micro. Okay, that's kind of a lie. There's Bramblebush, who is kind of micro, and there's also the likes of All-Star, Relic Hunter, and Turquoise Skull, who kinda need to be managed. That's why I say the mod isn't slow, because those are the kind of threats that keep you on your toes. And then also the more mild threats like newspapers. This laid-back style is really not present in any PvZ2 mod ever. They're usually either slow but grandiose, so they don't really feel as relaxed, or they're simply very much chaotic, like Becklease, the incarnation of chaos. Speaking a bit of chaos, this mod really doesn't have much. Outside of a few levels and a bit of the zombies, it's very much balanced. This, in my opinion, kinda hurts the mod a bit. Not saying all mods need to be chaotic, like I said, though a touch of chaos is kinda what makes the mod not all too boring. Not really boring, boring's not the right word. It makes the mod more appealing. Gun Rush being as balanced as it is, kinda leaves little wiggle room for balanced stuff. As in, if a new mechanic was introduced, it would basically need an overhaul or something. Speaking of the balancing, let's check out the plants and zombies, eh? The currently released version of Gun Rush is kind of a demo to it, so this is the reason why there aren't that many plants and zombies. But the ones that are here are quite fun. Starting with the plants, let me just say I am not a huge fan of most of the shop plants. This is kinda bad when you've got fast zombies like All-Star and Tree Dude and, ironically enough, Balloon Zombie. There's also Witch Hazel, which, as I mentioned, is Galore's hero. And there's also Colonel Bolt, who is meh. Just generally. He's basically just his PvZ1 counterpart. I guess PvZ2 because he was the King Channel. And there's also Peanut, who I kinda like actually. He's a nice condension of both Walnut and Fuchsia for a cheaper price as well. That's something PvZ2 didn't do, and just paint a Fuchsia and a Walnut on one tile without considering absolutely anything. Most of the plants that you unlock in the adventure mode are well designed. Not good or anything, but all of them are well designed. Starting with Pea Shooter, P is honestly quite good even for Pea Shooter standards. Consider there's no repeater who's just Pea Shooter but betterer, and there's the a bit more controversial Free Peter who kinda loses his son in side rows. He's not that bad. Against the game's hardest levels though, he sucks. However, that was expected for the literal tutorial plant. Walnut's also nice. He has 2.5 times HP compared to PvZ2, but he kinda needs that because there's like 10 million imps that are gonna be protected by bucketheads, or something of the like. Sir Cabbage is the first hero unlock, and boy is he a very good one. I think he's easily the best plant in the game. He basically deals a lot of damage, and he has a lot of splash in a 3x3 area. So he's both a horde remover, and he's gonna remove the most dangerous zombie. Usually. He can also just target imps, but that doesn't happen too often. The only problem I have with him is that due to his slow fire rate, he can look like an absolute buffoon. Though that's kind of inevitable with his design. Up next is Repeater, who, just like Peter, got scaled down and cost quite a bit. Had he been 325 Sun, he would have not been as usable as he is now, or you would have needed to use 5 sunflowers to properly use him, which would have been ill. AKA, he is very good, the best non-hero plant, because he's the heaviest non-hero plant, and heavy plants in PvZ games are usually very good. It's kinda hard to get them because, again, limited sunflowers, but he's also not nigh unaffordable. Speaking of sunflowers, they're up next and they're actually not as good as I thought they were. I thought they produce sun once every 15 seconds, though that was very much wrong. They actually produce sun once every 25 seconds, which actually means that they repay themselves at the exact same time that you can get Sunny Twins down, which essentially means if you want to get only 4 sunflowers down, just get a Sunny Twins because it doesn't screw up your early game stuff. Their introduction level is meat, I suppose. Having to produce sun in a game where you don't really have to play sunflowers is admittedly kinda cool. And to be perfectly honest, if you wanted to change sunflowers quite a bit, you'd basically need to overhaul everything. Anyways, Spikeweed. I kinda don't like Spikeweed in this mod. Almost everything besides Turquoise, which just kind of is a neutral matchup, and Camperimp, which is a good matchup, counters Spikeweed in some way. Newspaper doesn't really counter, he's kinda just not a great matchup. Balloon actively counters by flying over it. Barrel, due to the sun limitations, is actually more of a detriment rather than a benefit, like he was probably supposed to. All-Star just completely ignores him due to his fast speeds. And the Tree Man, I'm not even sure of his name, he basically can move from column 6 to column 4, meaning that he could potentially just land right on your walnuts. Speaking of walnuts, because of your sun limitations, you kinda have to bring walnut to make Spikeweed useful. So that means you'll waste a slot on both walnut and Spikeweed when the superior Sir Cabbage III and Bramblebush will cover basically the same things. And not necessarily better, just differently. Walnut keeps a lot more targets in one area, whereas Bramblebush is kinda focused on more single targets like All-Stars or Turquoise Skulls. That's the main reason why Spikeweed isn't used. Bramblebush is just so much better, not even at his role. Sir Cabbage III is better at his role of being a splash damage plant, but Bramblebush fills his quota of cheap spammable plant that I can put anywhere on the lawn. He's also, from my experience, the only real counter to Turquoise Skull, and he's a great matchup against All-Star, easily the latest threat in Garden Rush, so yeah. I don't think I need to say much about Sunny Twins, honestly, so I'll just move on to the extra level plants. I won't be talking about the secrets plants because they're not really intended. Anyways, Fat Beet and Garlic, very much synergetic plants. A bit questionable when you have 4 seed slots, but I haven't used them all too practically because the latest levels I can are either have freaking Gargantuars, or they are a level infested with tree dudes and all-stars. So yeah, he does have a late game opportunity to shine, but he is most certainly... I can't really judge him per se because I haven't used him. Moving on to the zombies, let's talk a bit about the 2 imps. Imps just generally have very low HP, and they'll usually kinda be behind the hordes. So, aka if you don't have splash, well, sucks to be you, because they'll be biting at your walls with 0 punishment, even though they take like 3 P-shots to kill. Imp is kind of annoyance to the power of 1.5. Not 2, because if you kill them within the same a group of them within the same tile, they'll only spawn 1 backpack due to importer limitations. Though if they're 2 tiles apart, then that's 2 times the backpacks. which have decent HP. Again, Sir Cabbage doesn't really care about these existing, and they'll actually get rid of them quite decently. But if you don't have him for some reason, such as in Needle Blight Forest 3, well, that's kind of sucks. Also, if you kill him on column 9, he just doesn't drop anything, so there's that. Newspaper Zombie, and by extension the basic trio, are pretty much unchanged from vanilla, so I don't feel like I need to talk about them. Except for the fact that basic zombies have 200 HP now, which means literally nothing except they drop their arm on the 6th hit instead of the 5th. That's it. Anyways, for my number one most hated zombie in this mod, the Tree Man. Why? Because he's a relic hunter, but he's insanely fast. For some reason. Well, actually, I do know the reason. It's because our plants have literally 1,000 HP. If we didn't have that, he'd be kind of a joke, because a matter like this is explicitly a counter to him. That doesn't prevent him from being any less irritating. He's kinda the only thing you want to use your Endurian drops on early game that's not all-star zombies or imps, so there's that. I suppose, but that's only kind of a thing in the early levels like Needleblight Forest 4 or 5. Balloon Zombie is unchanged, so next up is Barrel Roller. He's, I'm not sure different, but the conditions to deal with him are different enough to where I thought he should get a mention. You basically just can't place spike weeds to explode his barrel, because that just doesn't work the sun meta. Bramblebush works a lot better to just keep his barrel there, instead of just exploding it and releasing annoying imps all over the place for 100 sun. For Koi Skulls and All-Stars, I won't be mentioning, other than the fact that they are annoying, because they're seemingly unchanged. So I'll move on to this next thing that maybe I should have said a bit earlier in part 1, or maybe just at the plant section, but I want to keep it at the very end because they're quite unique. Endangered plants. There's currently only 2, Ent and Chomper. Chomper only being available in E1, while Ent is a bit more widespread. They're basically just really powerful plants that just are on your lawn, and you have to defend them. Thank God they have a bunch of HP, like everything in this mod. Starting with Ent, he stuns every single zombie in 3 tiles in front of him, and Chomper is just Chomper. Admittedly, Chomper isn't the most interesting thing ever, however, Ent kind of is. There is one extra level, E3, which does use him in a pretty cool way. But other than that, I guess they are a neat substitute for world gimmicks, I suppose. They give the world a bit more flavor. According to Garnrush devlogs, or I guess announcements, these are going to be recurring in the mod, so I guess they really are just substitute for world gimmicks. I really wouldn't mind, because coming up with unique world gimmicks is very much hard. And to cap off this plant and zombie section, let's talk about the biggest and baddest of them all, the Gargantuars. And he took a page out of Molassalon Curve from Mario Odyssey because his rematch is far easier than his initial battle. Well, if you kill the first Gargantuar before he spawns anything, which is you can do because he gets done as soon as he enters. Otherwise, your early game is going to be a bit messy. You'll deal a lot of damage to Gargantuar, though he might survive, then thus spawn more zombies, and thus kinda damage your Ents. Even though the final wave spawns 10 Gargantuars instead of level 10's 5, and even though they don't need to get as far into the lawn to make you lose, the Ents are so good that they cancel that advantage out, and even add in extra to your side of the scale. Quick side tangent before we move on to part 3, I've got a question. Is this video spacing a bit too fast? The intro is admittedly a bit rushed. I kinda went very fast over a few things. Though I'm also wondering if the rest of the video spacing is a bit too awkward for you. I very much have no script and will likely not have for quite a while. So I'm just asking, how is this spacing okay or is it too fast? Side tangent over, let's move on to basically kinda overall opinions and also opinions on the art and the music. Starting with the art first because I have absolutely zero comments. I absolutely do not care that they use mostly modern day zombies plus the new Needle Blight Forest stuff because the new stuff is absolutely amazing. You can already see from the background that the lawn is quite beautiful looking. I like this campsite thingy. Camper Imp, the tree dude, and cameraman, and also Raft dude, I almost forgot about him, are actually very good looking. My favorite new zombie looks wise, I think, is a toss up between Camper Imp and Cameraman. I'm saying toss up because Cameraman is annoying, though I quite like how Cameraman looks. I don't know what is it even. They're just appealing. It's hard to describe. Just by the title screen and map alone, you can tell that the art in this mod is most certainly not rushed, like the garden. Okay, that joke was extremely lame. Whoosh. Also about the art, I can only really talk about generally, unless there is some outlier that either looks good or really good or out of place. The music, I can't have to delve into specifics because, well, each music track is inherently different. Title screen music is most certainly a vibe setter, as is the first wave. The world map music is so serene. And the midwave tracks, a little bit of a tangent. I hate how similar they are. If midwave tracks were just similar in general, I would have zero issues with this. But considering that literally every single world, besides ancient Egypt, which in that case I also don't like, all the wave themes are completely different. I don't even care that they are about motifs, they're just way too similar, Midwave A and Midwave B. If they had the same motifs but sounded very much differently, I could get past that. In short, I'm trying to say that I don't necessarily dislike motifs or themes that sound similar, but what kind of annoys me about these two specifically is that midwaves usually sound quite different from each other, but these two sound very similar. The final wave and the boss themes I have absolutely zero complaints about, and they also kinda feel similar. They most certainly have the final wave energy. Because the final wave is usually where everything falls apart, and the themes reflect that perfectly. Moving to the part with literally zero structure, let's talk about something that you might have absolutely not expected. Glitches. First is one that I don't think anyone has noticed unless it was on accident. And the endangered one, the not even in the almanac, but on the seed selection menu, if you click on him, he has Iceberg Lettuce's description. That's because in coding he uses Iceberg's description and all of it was replaced except that little tooltip thing. Either because one of the devs forgot or maybe they couldn't. I kinda doubt that though because, well, the hard code in this game is BS sometimes. I don't think it's this levels of BS. This next one I think no one will encounter, but I did, out of boredom. Here's what you gotta do to activate the glitch, or I guess do the glitch. Step 1, click on a power-up. Step 2, click off a power-up. Step 3, place the power-up. Step 4, notice that the power-up hasn't gone on cooldown because you just click off of it. Step 5, exploit this. Because there is no such power-up in PvZ2, I guess there isn't any code that tells that if you click off of this, the power-up should stop doing its thing. An easy fix to this would be just placing it in a seed slot section. However, you'd basically have to treat the pre-selected plants as power-ups, which, if you played this current version, would be a bit off. It was changed in an update or something like that. The alternative would just be to fix the bug, though for that you gotta see what causes it. So, I'm not confident, but this would be the ideal solution. These two oddities aside, I'm gonna talk a bit about my experience with Duranless. It was rough at first. Like, if you're gonna attempt expert mode Duranless, just don't do it after your first playthrough. I remember Needle Light Forest 4 taking like 2 hours, but then I didn't play for a while, and then when I came back, I beat it first try. Moral of the story is that don't attempt challenges blind. I still didn't learn that lesson because for both Collisionist Carnival and Assault Airspace and Reflourished, I attempted a challenge run first time I played them. Which for a Collisionist Carnival specifically, it just left me with a bad opinion of the world. Whilst for Assault Airspace, it put me in a good mood. I don't know how to describe it. There was only like one level which I absolutely did not like. Whilst Collisionist Carnival was just kind of tedious all around. Now for a somewhat final verdict. Should you play Gun Rush? Well, yeah, it's only 13 levels long, so it doesn't take that long. On normal mode, the difficulty is actually quite friendly. If you are good at the game, play on Expert. And also, don't do challenge runs the first time you play Expert mode, otherwise you will just lose miserably. Got it? Good. Usually when I play PvZ2 mods, I kinda play by my own rules. I don't pick what the game wants me to pick, I pick what I want to pick. And Gun Rush is so small that you can't really do that. However, the natural gameplay just flows, so even by the game's rules, I could still have fun. Not saying that I can't have fun while also playing by other mods rule sets, but that's besides the point. Overall, Gun Rush just has a very fun and balanced gameplay loop. Well, balanced with quotations, because this is PvZ. Balance is always in quotations. Also, like I said in the beginning of the video, or I guess around the beginning, this mod's got a very relaxed vibe that isn't really any other PvZ2 mod, so it's even kind of a unique experience. To sum up, it's a very cool mod, and it's short and you should play it. However, if you're looking for a really chaotic or hard mod, just don't play Gun Rush. The only hard level in this game is E2 and a bit Needle by 10. And it's also, like I said, not really that chaotic. If you really crave some chaos, just play Eclipse. Or Requiem, that works too. Another thing that very much holds this mod back for me is just that at the end of the day, it's a demo. There's very few plants, and that's the main reason why you can't really deviate from the game's rules. There just isn't enough plants. And that honestly kinda holds it back. Also, the fact that this is a demo means that these stages are meant to be tutorial-esque. Not that they're that littered with tutorials, or even hardcode BS, but they are intended as the first world and not just a short game. Well, they kind of became a short game. However, they're not really built for that, I guess. I am mostly saying this because there are short worlds in PvZ2 mods that just leave me wanting more, and I still felt like I played an entire world of 32 levels in those like 10 or something. Whilst Gun Rush does leave me wanting more, though I'm kinda also asking, that's it? A little bit of a content deficit, but that's very much fine. Also, speaking of the first worlds, the new music for the second area dropped like 2 months ago. I listened to it, and it kinda sounds like Zelda music. Not complaining, just an observation. In fact, I quite like it. So yeah, that was my review of Garden Rush. For a bit of outro stuff, I'm finally getting a work print done on my PvZ2 mod PvZ2 Blast from the past, which has the core idea of PvZ1 plants in PvZ2, though that's mainly just theming because a lot of them are totally different. Like, for example, cabbage pulp is somewhat similar to citron. That is subject to change, of course, however, I've made a lot of planning, and I want to put that planning to use. My next planned video is on a PvZ1 mod, which I dubbed PvZ Speedway. It's made by me, but the idea is by someone else. It's not as they claim it to be a better version of PvZ1, hell no. However, it's essentially just 2x speed zombies with very mean balance changes to some plants. It was initially conceived as a balancing exercise, however, recording it was just kind of me having fun with a very dumb PvZ2 mod. PvZ1 mod! Oh, Jesus Christ. The video. I will also attempt to procrastinate less on these videos. However, I give no guarantees. Wanted to end this on a more positive note, but I'm kind of an overthinker, so I don't really think that's possible. I hope you enjoyed my silly little video, and have a good day.